Greetings Sonic Soundheads and welcome back to the workshop. In this video I'm going to demonstrate how you can use the built-in tools in Cubase and a few free third-party tools to create this huge sounding synth melody without ever physically playing a note. So if you want to follow along, fire up your copy of Cubase and let's get going. And if you appreciate this type of content and want to see more, please help out the channel, subscribe, like, share, and all that good stuff.
So I'm kind of going for a bit of an 80s vibe. So I'm using Steinberg's virtual analog synth powerhouse Retrolog with the Amiable Keys preset, which has a nice brassy sound. And I'm also using the free version of Syntronic by IK Multimedia for a Moog bass sound. And for the drums, I'm just using the Steinberg's Groove Agent SE with the Electro Pop Kit factory preset. So first, you want to add a chord track. Right click, add track, and find the chord track. And so we add a chord track. We're going to set the voicing to piano. And from the options, we're going to choose rock, easy jazz. And most importantly, we're going to use the track selection to use monitored tracks. So this way, whatever synth instruments I add to this session, they will all follow the chord structure that I create, assuming I turn on this orange monitor button here. So I want to set up an 8-bar loop, so I've just created my, my left and right locators and set loop. So on my numeric keyboard, I hit the slash button and that turns the looping on and off. You also want to hit J on the keyboard or hit this button up here, and that's going to turn snapping on. We don't want any sloppy jazz chord changes here, right? So I'm going to right click, grab the pencil tool, and I'm just going to click in the chord track at the 0 bar or the first measure. I'm going to click at the second measure, the fourth measure, and the 8th measure. Now I can hit 1 on my keyboard, or I can right click and choose the pencil tool again. And then I can just double click each of these chords and input my chord changes. So I'm using a very basic 1-6-2-5 chord progression in C major. So I'm going to add in my first C major chord, A minor, and then I'm going to use a couple of fancy 7th chords just to spice it up a little bit. I'm going to do D minor 7th, and I'm going to use the dominant 7th of G7. So let's have a listen to that. Okay, so nice, that G7 is the dominant 7th chord in the C major scale, pulls back nicely to the C major, and it all flows and rotates quite nicely. Easy music, but it's not very exciting, is it? So what I want to do now is I'm going to, on the Retrolog track, and I've muted the Syntronic track for the moment, let's just focus on the Retrolog, on the keys, and I'm going to come down to MIDI inserts, and in the first slot I'm going to add Arpeggiator 5, Arpeggiator, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but Arpeggiator sounds kind of exotic, so I'm going to go with that. So I'm going to set the direction to up down, which is just normal. Step size I want to set to 1/2. So a large step size, and I'll get to that in a moment. Length I'm going to leave at 16th notes. Key range I'm going to leave at 12 semitones, so a whole octave. Step size of 1/2. I want to leave enough space for the staggered delays effect that we're going to add next. And so I don't want the arpeggiator to fill out the notes in the chord progression. I just want it to basically play a chord every measure, or every half measure, so every 2 beats, and that's going to feed into the delays. So the chord C is going to be providing the triad, 3 or 4 notes, probably 4 notes with the 7th chords. But the C is probably going to be a triad, which is going to feed into the arpeggiator, which is then going to feed into the delays. And again, we haven't entered any notes on the piano roll. We haven't played any notes. I don't even have a MIDI controller hooked up. So let's have a little listen to how that sounds. Alright, so it's sounding a little more like the main hook of a song now. It sounds like music, but like I said, I've intentionally left enough space for the delays to work. So it's still a little bit empty, but that's okay. So before we get into stacking delays to really fill out that sound canvas, I just want to get some dope beats going, right? Or at least just an 80s style drum loop. And this isn't a drum tutorial, so I'm just going to cut to the chase and grab from the pattern tab, not the individual hits on the pads. I'm going to go to the pattern tab and just audition a couple of these. That's got kind of a cool 80s vibe to it. So is that. Not sure I like the submarine. That's a bit sparse. So it's between beat 2 or beat 3. I'm just going to go with the simple one. I'm going to go with beat 2 and I'm just going to drag from this tab. I'm going to put it right here. Start the first measure on the Groove Agent track, and if I come up to this sort of middle node on that event, on that part, and I just drag, it means I can duplicate it real quickly. So now I've got 8 measures of drum beat. Alright, that will do for now. And already our little hook has like double the energy and momentum. Thumbs up for jums. I'll come back to these in a moment, but for now they give a bit of a frame of reference where the beats are and how the delays, when we start to stagger them, will sort of fall in relation to those beats. So all right, anyway, back to stacking those delays. The idea of this technique is that it's going to fill out the sound stage across the panorama, adding depth and movement, all the little bits of detail and subtlety that really make your synth music just sing, come alive. So in the Retrolog audio inserts, so if I come this tab and come down to audio inserts, you can see I've already added and bypassed some of these effects. I'm just going to unbypass them one at a time, and let's take a look at stereo delay instance 1. I've got 3 instances of the stereo delay, and this is just the stock stereo delay that comes with the Cubase install. So no third-party plugins here. If you're in Cubase or whatever DAW you're following, you probably have a stereo delay, so follow along with this technique. So what I have here on the left channel, and I say left because I have it panned hard left and panned hard right for the 2 channels, I suppose, in the stereo delay. And I'm going to set the left side delay to quarter notes and the right side to dotted quarters. So already we have this syncopation going on, and of course make sure you have the sync button turned on down here, and that will synchronize it to the tempo of your session, which incidentally is 120 BPMs here. I have, let's go left to right, I have feedback set at around 35, and I have the high cut filter set between like 13 and 14K, and the mix up between like 60 and 70%. Again, I'm not being terribly accurate here. Use your ears to fine tune it, but you know, don't have to be exact with these numbers. It's not going to make a whole huge lot of difference. So let's just take a listen to what this first instance of the delay is doing. So already, just with one delay, it's much bigger, and the stereo spectrum just sounds fantastic. Let's solo that real quick. I'm going to turn off the drums, and let's have a quick listen to... So there you get a sense of just what that delay is doing. So let's turn on that second instance of the stereo delay and take a look at its settings. This time I've set the left delay, and again everything's hard panned left and right for the two stereo channels. I've got dotted eighths on the left side, and I've got straight eighths on the right side. So again, introducing some syncopation, but I'm offsetting it so that the syncopated beats are on the left side and the straight eighths are on the right side. This time I've brought the feedback down to about 25%, and the high cut is down between 11 and 12 K, and the mix is between say 40 and 50% here. So let's have a little listen to what the second instance of the delay does. Wow, that's really starting to sound rich and full. The original notes and the quarter note delays are feeding into the eighth note delays and just moving all around all over the spectrum left to right. It's really sounding great, but we can do better. We can go one more. Third and final delay, come on down. Let's bypass that and take a look at the settings. So I have straight 16ths on the left channel, and I have dotted 16ths on the right channel. Feedback is now down at around the 20% mark. I have the high cut filter down between 9 and 10K, and the mix is down around 35-ish. So what's happening here with the filter? The delays are getting progressively quieter through the mix and progressively darker through the high cut. So the primary initial delays are brighter and louder, with the secondary and tertiary delays just sort of filling up the space and adding loads of movement and bouncing around and creating energy. It sounds massive. I love it. So let's just take a listen. Let's audition just those three instances. It's lovely. I really love this effect. And again, to reiterate, we haven't entered any notes. We haven't put fingers on a controller or played a piano. We have just put 4 chord changes on a chord track, and using a arpeggiator to feed into these delays which then feed into each other, so it's stacking from top to bottom: chord, arpeggiator, delay 1, delay 2, delay 3. So they all interact, and that's the beauty of this technique. But there's one last little bit of polish we want to add on. We can't have a sort of 80s synth track without adding a spot of reverb. So you got to have reverb on every synth track, right? So I'm using the free Valhalla Supermassive. Yeah, I said that right. Free. Awesome. Supermassive. So thank you, Valhalla, for this fantastic tool. So you can download and follow along at home wherever you might be watching this. The reverb settings are pretty moderate. I just pulled up the reverse 8th note preset and dialed back the feedback and the mix a little bit, and the density a little bit, dialed it down. So nothing too crazy, just a little bit of polish and a little bit of modulation. So let's have a listen to what Supermassive adds to the mix. Stunning. Supermassive just makes everything sound better. It's like the bacon of VSTs. Delicious. Anyway, so it just kind of glues everything together, makes all those notes just sort of melt into one another. Fantastic. So I'm going to close all of these. We're done with the retrolog. What we're missing here to complete our little synth ditty is a little bit of bass. So I'm going to unmute Syntronic. And again, so this is the free version. So you can sign up for an account at IK Multimedia and download this and follow along at home, absolutely free. It's just feature limited and has just a small subset of the massive amount of presets that the full version of Syntronic comes with. It's a great multi-timbral virtual analog synth workstation with layering and keyboard splits and a great effects section, and of course an arpeggiator, which is what we're going to be playing with. So I'm just using one of the Moog Taurus presets, the Bully 3 Raw Saws Lite. And I haven't changed any of the settings here. I've just left it as is. Let's just go into the arpeggiator and get to by this little icon up here. And the way we want to get the arpeggiator going, I just want a little sort of 4-note loop. So I'm just going to drag this slider out until the 1, 2, 3, 4 beats in the arp are sort of lit up. Then I want to drag up the velocity of each of these beats, and I'm going to put a bit of an accent on the 3rd beat, and maybe 2 and 4 will be a little bit quieter. So I'm going to set the rate to 1/8. I'm going to leave the mode at up. I'm going to hit latch and click play, and you can see the playback indicator starting right there. And because it's following the chord changes, like the retrolog, it should have all the notes it needs to activate the notes in the arpeggiator. I'm going to mute the retrolog just so we can focus on Syntronic and take a little listen to that. So that's a pretty cool little bass groove, but there's one thing I don't like in it. It's a little high in the register. It's sending the same chords to the Syntronic as it is to the retrolog, and that pitch is fine for the retrolog. So what I want to do with Syntronic is, if I come back up into the ARP, and this is just a quick down and dirty way of achieving this. I'm sure there are other more elegant ways, but I'm just going to come into the little note drop down here and just drop each one by -12 semitones, so it's going to play back an octave lower than the notes received from the chord track. So let's try that. And that's much, much better, obviously. That sounds more like a bass track. Very nice. So, right, let's finish up by coming back to this drum loop we added earlier. I'm going to start by coming over to the strip, the channel strip settings on the Cubase mixer. Now, if you're in a different DAW, then there may be other ways you can do this, but I'm just going to use the built-in channel strip tube compressor just as a quick down and dirty way of getting the drums a little grittier. So I'm going to use the tube compressor. I just want to rough them up a little bit, you know. I don't want to hurt them. I just want to send them a message. You know what I mean? And to do that, I'm just going to use the tube compressor, and I'm going to set the attack, a quite long attack. I'm not going to get into the specific numbers, but say around 10 o'clock on the dial, and for the release about 8 o'clock, so it's a bit of a quicker release. I'm going to bring the drive up about to noon, and so I'm just going to bring up the input gain until I just start to see some activity on the sort of monitor here. And if I bypass that compressor, you can see it just adds a little more something. Right, next I'm going to add a reverb, and I'm just going to use the Roomworks reverb that comes with the Cubase install, and I'm just going to use a bright plate reverb preset from the factory settings. So maybe I think all I'm going to do is just bring the pre-delay down to maybe more around, 15%, something quite low. Now, I wouldn't normally add reverb to the whole kit like this. I'd put each drum on its own channel and be a bit more judicious how I set up the effects. But this is a quick tutorial and I've got to get this thing finished, so I'm cutting corners to add effects to the entire kit here. So I want that 80s kind of vibe. So of course we're wanting a gated reverb to get that 80s sort of sound. So I'm just going to add the gate. If I just type in there gate, it's going to search for it and find it. So from the dynamics drop down, it will find the gate. Again, this is just the plugin that comes installed with Cubase. And so we want to find the point at which the gate is opening up to let the sound through, but then closes very shortly after, so we don't get too much reverb tail. And it's a bit of a push and pull. It's a bit of using your ears and just tweaking it until you find the right sort of sound. So with the attack turned all the way down to the minimum and hold turned down all the way to the minimum, I'm going to leave release where it is for now. We'll come back to that in a moment. I'm going to start playing the soloed drum loop and slowly increase the threshold until the gate starts to activate. You can see the LED is now blinking yellow. So ideally just the kick and the snare we want to activate the gate. Okay, it's not bad, around 35, 33. So now we come to the release. The release is like how quickly does that gate shut? So we leave it open longer, the gate is going to be open longer and everything's going to start to wash together again. If I start to bring the release down very slowly, I can have a bit of greater control over how much of that reverb tail it's not sounding too bad. So if I just bypass all of the audio inserts for a second, we can sort of see what effect that has on the drums. And if I just bypass the gate so we can see what that's doing to the reverb. So a pretty cool, quick, down and dirty way of getting that 80s gated reverb effect, which adds some big energy to the drums, but retaining the clarity of each hit, mostly. So let's turn everything back on and sound check it. Now that to me sounds pretty damn sweet. The gated reverb is not something I use all the time, but for this exercise I think it really does the job. Okay, so there's just one more thing I need to do before we finish up to the drum loop. If I come into the arrange window and right click and choose the split tool, the scissors tool, and I'm just going to click there at the 7th measure, so I end up with this one measure part. And if I come up to the MIDI menu and open the drum editor, so now I can just edit that last measure, and what I want to do is right click again, grab the drumstick, and then just drag all the way across. I had a couple of doubles there that I missed, and one there as well. Make sure you don't get those double hits. So now I can just select that track again, and then if I bring up the settings at the bottom here, and if I bring up the velocity properties at the bottom here, and if I right click and grab the line tool, I can then do like a nice ramp. If I click from about midway up to sort of full volume, we get this nice get that nice sort of ramped drum fill. So, and one final touch. The drums still need to poke through just a little bit more, so I'm just going to add just again stock compressor that comes installed with the app, and I'm just using the funky drums preset just to help bring out the drums just a tad. Bypass that. Just helps the drums not get lost amid the washiness of everything else. So there, let's review. We created this really cool sounding synth loop just by using the chord track and entering 4 notes in a chord progression. That filtered into the arpeggiator on the Retrolog synth track, and also into the built-in arpeggiator in the Syntronic bass preset. The Retrolog then feeds into a series of delays staggered with syncopated delay times to offset each other and create a big amount of motion. We took a pre-built drum loop, made it age appropriate for the track just by adding a couple of quick effects, and overall weaved this rich tapestry of sound. Oh, I do like that, rich tapestry of sound that I'm really happy with. I really love this. So I hope you liked this. I hope you learned something. Go try these effects out in your DAW and let me know how you got on. Give this a thumbs up. And if you valued this content, then consider subscribing for irregular released content like this and much more. Help a channel out for zero cost on your part. Thanks for watching, and until I see you in the workshop next time, go make some noise.